Okay, welcome back. Part 3, home stretch. Let's finish up talking about banishing busy, how to manage your mind to manage your schedule. I'm Christina Shenvi. You can reach me there. And again, my email will be at the end. I love hearing from people, so please write to me. We have talked so far about practicing value-based scheduling, avoiding self-sabotage. I really hope you enjoyed that part. That is, to me, just blows my mind. And now let's talk about managing your mind. This was all about, remember, managing your mind to manage your schedule. I don't know if this ever happens to you, but do you ever find yourself staring at your brain and thinking, what? What are you even thinking about that? Why is that worrying you? You wake up at night and your brain says, here, let me play you a tape of all the stupid things you've done. And you're like, no, 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 thanks. Okay, instead, how about everything that could go wrong in the next 3 months? Well, first of all, it's a great step to think about your thoughts. That's called metacognition. We've mentioned that before. Thinking about your thoughts as separate, actually, from yourself, because that allows you to then modulate or control your thoughts. And agency around your thoughts is what will give you a lot of the ability to tune your emotions and a lot of agency around your time. This is a friend of mine, Janelle Mulder, and she is a GYN surgeon, so was a very busy fellow. And somebody asked her, how do you always have time to do your hair and makeup? And she said, I don't have time. I make time. And what I love about that is that it claims agency over her time. It's not that all these other external things are happening, it's that she decides how she spends her time. And I want you to think about that next time you are thinking, oh my gosh, I'm just crazy busy. I don't have time to do any of this. Think about the fact that you have full agency over your time. Let's jump into this model. I want you first to think about all the circumstances, all the things that you have to do. You have to write that paper, you have to fill out that form, you have to do your taxes. Now you want to go organize your garage. You have to plan your kid's birthday party. You have to send thank you cards for your wedding gifts 10 years ago that you haven't done. You have to go buy cat food for your cat. But then you remember your cat died 2 years ago. You need to go get a new cat. All these things. You need to do your charts. You need to reply to 100 emails, all of these things that you have to do. Just think about them. Now, I want you to think about, how do you feel in that moment? Please avoid, it's like an itch, right? This itch to like pull out your phone and start doing those things, or your computer. Avoid that itch. If you have to, write them down in your brain dump from part 1. What are the emotions that all of that induces? Probably overwhelm, frustration, anger, possibly even other interesting things, betrayal, feeling like, why do I have to do all this stuff? Shouldn't somebody else have fixed this problem? Maybe unfairness. Why am I carrying the weight in this group, in this relationship, in this family? Why don't other people carry their weight? Now, if we think about those emotions, the way we get to them is from our thoughts about those circumstances or things that we need to do. So, for example, if you list all those line items of all the things that you have to do, that induces a negative emotion. Why? Well, it's because of the way that you're thinking about it. You're thinking those thoughts of, it's not fair. Why do I have to do this? Or maybe, why did I get myself in so deep again? Why did I agree to do this? And if we think in different ways, if we tune the levers of our thoughts, then we can actually tune our emotions to feel differently. So, for example, let's imagine you have all those same circumstances, all of those same line items. What are those? Those are just things that you have decided to do, or you have agreed to do, or you have put yourself in a position where you feel you need to do. How would you like to feel about those instead of overwhelmed, lost, drowning, etc.? Well, I would like to feel optimistic. I would like to feel in control, empowered, excited, curious. I would like to feel engaged, interested, forward looking. I'm looking forward to planning this birthday party. I'm looking forward to doing these things. And how can I change my thoughts in order to have those more positive and adaptive emotions. Because what happens when we go around all day feeling overwhelmed, angry, anxious, frustrated, betrayed, etc.? Well, are we very productive? No, we're not very productive. Is that a good use of our energy? Does that lead to resilience? No, that's a recipe for burnout and frustration. And that's a recipe for using self-worth protection strategies. That is a recipe, walking around with those emotions is a recipe for binge watching Netflix instead of doing the actual things that you needed to be productive about. So how could we change our thoughts in order to have more positive or more adaptive emotions? Well, there's a lot of different things you could think. For example, some of the things I choose to think when I'm feeling overwhelmed or frustrated is I have full agency over my time. My time reflects my big values. I love what I do. Isn't it cool? All the things I get to do. I get to write a paper that somebody might read. I get to write a talk that somebody might listen to. Isn't it cool that there's 30 people in the waiting room? They're all here to see me. I'm a doctor. Isn't that amazing? Okay, now I don't always manage that, but my goal is to change my thoughts so that then I have more adaptive cognitions and adaptive emotions. One of the I mentioned the Stoics earlier, and Marcus Aurelius and all of the Stoics really talk a lot about this, that managing our minds is the key to managing our emotions. And we already said from parts 1 and 2 that managing your time is all about managing your emotions. So now in order to manage our emotions, we need to manage our thoughts. He said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. External things are not the problem. It's your assessment of them. So it's how we think about these things. It's how we think about all the things we have to do on our to-do list that determines how we feel. And, well, good news, we have total power over our thoughts. One of the other quotes, when I'm recording this, we are in the middle of the COVID coronavirus pandemic. And I have returned to this quote probably at least 2 or 3 times a day in the last few weeks because there's just so much anxiety. There's so much uncertainty. Marcus Aurelius said, "Today I escaped anxiety." Or no, I discarded it because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside. All of that anxiety may be very well founded, but recognizing that it is within me, it is not external, and therefore I can control it. I want you to take your piece of paper and we're going to do another exercise. And I want you to think about, why are you so busy? What are some of the thoughts, the emotions, the motivations? Why are you so busy? And I want you to start with some of the good things. So pause for 2 minutes and write down as many good things about why you're busy. So what brings you joy about it? What things are opportunities for growth, for service, for whatever some of your big values were. Pause for 2 minutes and do that. Some of the ones, so you can come back, hopefully you paused it and did that little exercise. Some of the things that I think about for this are, for example, the things I do bring me joy. I feel good when I'm learning new things or I'm trying new things that are difficult. I love being able to help others. I love being able to teach others. I love being able to instill a sense of wonder and joy in others in learning. I feel good when I accomplish things. I like being part of a team and being valued as part of that team. Now I want you to take another couple minutes and write down all the reasons that you are busy that have to do with negative motivations or fear or manipulation. Why are you so busy for reasons other than what brings you joy and growth? So pause and think about that. Okay, let's come back together. Some of the ones that I thought about are, I'm worried that if I'm not working hard, I'll be a failure. I feel guilty if I don't respond right away or do something right away that somebody asks me to. I have something to prove to the people who said I'd never amount to anything. I can't remember where I read this. It was a long time ago, but I remember very distinctly, I'll never forget, reading this article about how some people are motivated by a desire to make a name for themselves. They want to be known. They want to be the person who's the expert in this. They want to make a name for themselves. Other people are motivated by a desire to prove people wrong who looked down on them or who said they would never be good at something. Maybe one of those resonates with you. Other things, I feel important when I'm needed. I went on vacation with another couple one time, and I remember kind of rolling my eyes and sighing and saying, oh, I had 65 emails just overnight that I had to sit and do this morning over breakfast on vacation. And my friend said, oh, I think I've only gotten 5 emails the last few days. And part of me realized, you know what? I was kind of bragging that I had so many emails because I feel important when I'm needed. I would actually feel sad if I only got 5 emails in a week, because that would feel to me that as if people didn't need me. They didn't have any questions for me. They didn't need me to do anything. And I realized that I was getting some self-worth from being needed. But that's a negative reason for being busy. Other reasons, fearing complacency or mediocrity, or wanting to overcome the feeling of imposterism. We talked about that earlier. We overwork and over-prepare, which can be a good thing, but in the imposter cycle, we talked about that being a negative thing, or feeling we have to do things in order to just get ahead, or wanting to make a name for ourselves, wanting to feel important. So think about why we're busy and which things are you doing for both of these reasons in each column. So for example, what things are you doing for joy and growth reasons? And what things are you doing out of fear and manipulation? And can you either stop doing those things or do less of them, or can you change the motivation? Let's think now about how we can take control of our emotions. And a lot of this really starts with self-awareness. That is the absolute key to understanding how we can be more adaptive in this. If you want to know more about this model, this is a framework for thinking about emotional intelligence, which includes 4 components: your awareness and ability to manage yourself, and your awareness and ability to manage relationships and the emotions of others. If you want to know more about this, the book Emotional Intelligence is a great start there. How can we actively manage our thoughts? Well, it starts with awareness. We said that. And then intentionality, choosing new thoughts. I told you about some of the thoughts that I like to choose around managing my time, such as I have full agency over my time. I get to do a lot of great things. I enjoy what I do. I get to be creative, etc. So choose new thoughts. Now, I want to go to one other, and I'll come back to those other things. Sometimes, if you have been thinking a negative thought so long, it becomes ingrained. It becomes a belief. It's just something that you have thought so deeply and so many times that you just believe it. And you can't just snap and quickly think something else. It doesn't work for you. And, just like the pregnancy weight, 9 months on, 9 months off, slow on, slow off. If you've been thinking it for a long time, maybe pregnancy weight's a bad example. Usually it's more than 9 months. But for thoughts, if you've been thinking it for a long time, then it's going to take some time to undo those patterns, to unwire those neurons to have new thoughts. Here's a model for how you can do this. And I think of this as the thought pit. So when you've had a negative thought that's just drilled down into a hole and you're at the bottom of that thought pit hole, how can you get out? Well, you can have sequential, believable thoughts. Think of it as a thought ladder. So maybe if you have some negative thought about something, you can't immediately switch it to a positive thought, but you can, for example, think about your motivation. Remember achievement goal theory, focusing on the process. So whenever you think that negative thought, replacing it with, I'm working hard to improve. And once you believe that, every time you have that negative thought, replace it with, I'm working hard to improve. Then once your mind believes that, replace it with the next rung on the ladder, which might be, I'm working hard to improve and hard work pays off. Or whatever it is for you. If you're a learner and you're studying and you're having a lot of anxiety about a test, maybe your first thought is, I'm a student. And you tell yourself that until you believe it, and it should be believable. And then the next step is, I'm a student and I'm working hard. And the step after that is, I'm a student, I'm working hard, and hard work pays off. So whenever you have that negative thought of I'm going to fail, you replace it with believable, sequential thoughts that undo the work that that thought pit or that negative thought has done. And the idea is you want to move from negative thoughts to positive, and from external motivation, such as if I fail at this, this will happen to me, that person will think this way of me, into internal motivation, agency, having agency over what you do, and having internal motivation that you're doing this because you love it, because it's aligned with your values. So, awareness, intentionality, choosing new thoughts, having a thought ladder if you need to climb out of that thought pit, and then having an internal locus of control. This relates to attribution theory, self-efficacy theory, a lot of different things in the educational psychology literature. But the idea is that, again, agency. You are in control both of what you think, which then controls how you feel, and in what you do. And there are different scores or quizzes that you can do to assess your locus of attribution, where you attribute things to, if you blame external circumstances versus if you take ownership of things. And this also relates to motivation, actually, because if you are more internally motivated, you tend to take more ownership of your tasks, your learning, your success. And then grace. It takes a lot of time to undo some of our negative thoughts, and it takes a lot of practice and forgiving ourselves and perseverance. This is not a quick overnight fix. So, we've talked about value-based scheduling, avoiding self-sabotage, managing your mind. Finally, let's talk about number 4, do 168-hour inventory. The only way to get more time or to get more done in your day is to be strategic about what you do and efficient in how you do it. So how can you practice value-based scheduling? Well, we already said first you have to know what your values are. But then we have to think about how are we actually allocating our time? Have people told you this? You can do it all. People love to tell young people this. You can do it all. You can have a family. You can have a career. You can be a successful researcher and an opera singer. And you can home sew all your kids' Halloween costumes and bake all their cakes. No, you cannot do it all. So the first step to understanding whether your time is being allocated in a value-based manner is to see how you are actually allocating it. This is a book written by a friend of mine called I Know How She Does It. And she has studied highly successful women. That's just her focus is women, to understand how they spend their time. And her big premise is you can't understand whether you're doing a good job with your time unless you truly know where it's going. And there's some really interesting findings. I do this every few months. I do an inventory of all my time and I log it into different fields or buckets of work, sleep, family, driving, housework, etc., exercise, friends, and that tiny little sliver of 1.75 hours over the week was my remaining personal time. And in doing this, I realized that my time is not aligned with my big values. I am working 66 hours a week and having only less than 14 hours for family. And that includes all our meal times and all our bedtime routine, which is, if you have kids, not a stress-free time. That is not a fun family time. That is a let's survive this dinner time right now. So I realized that I was spending way too much time working and that this was not aligned with my big values. For other people, though, in her book, she talks about how, on average, if you're working 45 hours a week and sleeping a decent amount and you drive to work and back, you actually have quite a bit of free time. And people think, if they estimate, they'll think, oh, I'm watching 3 hours of TV a week in their free time. But then once they actually track it, they realize, oh, they're watching 13 hours. So there you go. Right there, I can give you 10 hours free of charge extra in your week. So looking at how you're using your time so that you can actively and intentionally manage your free time and make sure that it is all aligned with your big values. Finally, number 5, stay in the deep end and drain the shallows. This book, Deep Work by Cal Newport, is something that I would recommend to all of you. And this is about being strategic and spending more time doing things that matter in a deep way. Let me unpack that a little bit. He gives this equation. I love equations. Deep work equation. High quality work produced equals time spent times intensity of focus. If you want to produce some high quality work, you either end up spending a lot of time in low focus or less time with high intensity focus. And that high intensity focus work is what he calls deep work. Deep work is focused, distraction free. So it's not done while you're also watching Tiger King or Game of Thrones. It's done distraction free. You're deeply thinking and planning. You're developing ideas or strategies. You're thinking about things, not just of them. I love this. How many times during the day do we think of the stuff we have to do? Oh, I have to write this paper. I'm thinking of it. Oh, I have to do that grant. I'm thinking of it. But then I never sit down and think about it. Deep work tends to bring joy and fulfillment. People who do more deep work are happier. Some examples might be writing papers, grants, curricula, talks, other big things that are important to you. Shallow work, on the other hand, is often short, often interrupted, involves little creativity or deep thought, usually is not very fulfilling or rewarding. It may be required to keep your job, so it's necessary, but not sufficient for really having joy at work. Things like this might be logging your duty hours. Most emails are shallow work, doing scheduling things, managing logistics, booking airline tickets, things like that are shallow work. This is the frightening thing from his book. He says, if you spend enough time in frenetic shallowness, you permanently reduce your capacity to perform deep work. In emergency medicine, we know from the recent literature that multitasking is really a myth. What we're actually doing is task switching. When we're doing shallow work, we're often switching from task to task, whereas when we're doing deep work, we're focused on one single task. And what he's saying is even when you're doing other things, when you're standing in the line at Starbucks, instead of frenetically doing frenetic shallowness and switching from Instagram and flicking through and Facebook and your email, that being so frenetic and constantly task switching actually impairs your ability to do deep work. So instead, stop and think about some problem that you're dealing with, or think about some project, and allow your mind to have that deep focus and deep work, even at times when you could just flip through something mindlessly. And the idea behind the deep work and focus is that you can't actually multitask. When you switch from task A to task B, there's what's called a task residue or an attention residue, where you're doing task B, but some of your attention is still on task A because you just switched from it. And then if you switch to task C, well, now you're still thinking a little bit about A and a little bit about B. And so you aren't able to really apply that deep focus. And to me, this is just horrifying given the way that we work in the emergency department, where you're thinking about one patient and then you have to switch to document on another patient or order something, and then somebody hands you an EKG, a family member comes up to ask you something in front of the counter, somebody, comes in asking directions to 6-bed tower, and of course you don't know, so you have to go find out. And all this constant task switching is dangerous and impairs our ability to do deep work. To be strategic with our time, we need to do more deep work. Well, how can we do it? It's all very well and good to just say, well, we need to do better. How do we do that? Well, here's some tips. First, schedule your deep work time. Put it on your calendar. Put it in whatever app you use. Put it on your task manager. Schedule your deep work time and protect it like it's a shift. We cannot schedule anything else. This is my deep work time. And then plan ahead how you will assess it, how you will use it, What are you going to do during that deep work time? You want to avoid the cognitive load of constantly making decisions about what to do with your day. So by pre-scheduling it, you've removed that cognitive load. Finally, assess your own deep work ratio. He talks about the deep work ratio. How much time are you spending in deep work each day? And how much time are you spending in shallow work? And how can you spend more time in deep work? So that's strategy. Next is efficiency. The shallow work we need to do efficiently in order to free up more time for deep work. David Allen's book that I mentioned at the very beginning is called Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity. Doesn't that sound nice? Stress-free productivity. His premise is that open loops are the enemy of productivity and deep work. So think about this. If I have some task I need to do, that's an open loop. And I will keep thinking about it and it will keep using up some of my cognitive capacity until it is done. So you need to find a way to capture those open loops so that they are not constantly running in your mind. His rule is, okay, if it will take 2 minutes or less, do it. So delegate it. Remember, outsourcing. If you can delegate or outsource the shallows, do that. If you can defer, if you need to, you can defer it. So for example, if I am doing my shallow work, I'm doing my emails, most of the emails I can do well within 2 minutes. Most I can do within 30 seconds. So I just do them. If it's something that will take more than 2 minutes or something that is deep work, then I flag it to do later. So for example, if somebody emails me a draft of a paper to review, that's not shallow work, that's very deep work. I need to defer that and put it in my deep work time. So I flag it as that's my deep work flag to do later. Or decline it. Remember our values. Is this in line with my values? This offer to be on this committee, this offer to write this book chapter, this offer to be involved in this project. Maybe it is. If it's not, well, you have your values, look at them, you've written them down. Is this in line with my values? So that's his framework, is do, delegate, defer, decline. And his idea is that you need to find a way to capture those open loops that you can trust. So for example, if I have these things to do and they're constantly floating up in my mind, like that mind trash, then I need to have a system where I can write it down, whether that's on my calendar, my task manager, a piece of paper. I'm actually a big fan of pieces of paper. I need to write it down and do it. When I get emails, I need to organize them. I want my inbox to be no more than 20 emails. And ideally, I would get to the bottom of that every day, not always. But for example, if I get an email that's something I need to work on later during deep work time, I can put it in a deep work folder. If it's something that can be deleted, that would be actually my extra D in this do, delegate, defer, decline, delete as much as possible. But delete it if you can. If it's something you want to read later, you don't need that in your inbox. Put that in a folder for things to read later. If it's an email about your upcoming flight to a conference, make a folder for future events and a subfolder for that conference with the date, and then put all your correspondence related to that into that folder. That way, when you're about to go to the conference, you open it up and you say, okay, here's my flight, here's my hotel, here's my registration. Instead of searching your email for JetBlue or Southwest or Hilton or whichever hotel, and you don't remember what hotel it was, you can't even find it. So putting all of those things into folders in a system that you trust will help you free up that cognitive load and also be more efficient. Now, I know you're thinking, because I see you thinking it, you're thinking, but I have 10,000 million emails in my inbox. What do I do with them? Well, don't worry, I have a plan. First, create your folders in your email for what you need to sort things into. So I have one for future events and then a subfolder by date for each of my future travel, meetings, talks. And then I have a folder for past events so that I can keep track of those, so that I know, for example, if I have to submit receipts, I can go to that event folder and find the receipt for my hotel or my Ubers. I put all my receipts and emails related to one event in there. And then have a folder for each project. Now, what do you do with all of your emails that are in your inbox? Here's the magic. Are you ready? Make a folder that says inbox prior to, and then put today's date. And then take maybe everything but the top 50 and put it in there. Now you only have 50 emails in your email inbox that you can go through and do, delegate, defer, delete, or categorize into one of your folders. And you can practice with your folders and only keep what you need to keep. Delete as much as possible. That way you still have those old emails. You can always go back and search for something, but it's not clogging up your inbox. I cannot tell you how amazingly freeing this was. It transformed my life, and I am so grateful for that trick. And that's actually not from this book exactly, but it's a great tip that I learned at a AAMC leadership conference. This book, I would recognize if you are somebody who struggles with organization. His system is a little bit overly complicated for me, but I use a somewhat simpler version than his. That is it. So be strategic. Select schedule and maximize your value-aligned deep work. And then be efficient with all the shallow work. Minimize it. Do it quickly. Do delegate, defer, delete, and do those things as quickly as possible. Let's summarize. We have talked about a lot of things in these 3 sessions. We talked about having your time aligned with your big values. You can't know if you're doing a good job with time management unless you know what you value. We talked about self-worth theory. I hope that that was so interesting for you and that you related to it. We talked about why we procrastinate, the fear of failure, self-worth preservation, avoidance of negative emotions, and we talked about peering into that activation barrier to see what is inside it. Let your curiosity run amok. Curiosity is so protective and so amazing. Foster it like it's a little puppy. We talked about effort. Talent is your position. Effort is your velocity. Value the effort. Value the questions. Value the process. That was the achievement goal theory. We talked about managing your mind to manage your emotions, that your thoughts are the lens that change what the circumstances are into an emotion. So you can change that emotion to be more adaptive and productive by tuning the lens of your thoughts. We talked about looking at your time and assessing first, where is it going? Examine your time. Where is it going? And we talked about being strategic about more deep work and being efficient about your shallow work. So if you thought that managing your time was going to be a quick solution, that you just needed one more app on your phone or one more task manager or one more calendar, I'm sorry to disappoint you. The solution is not more apps on your phone. It's actually a lot of deep work, a lot of introspection, a lot of tough questions, a lot of continuously managing your mind. These are my 5 action items for taking control of your time: practicing value-based scheduling, avoiding self-sabotage, managing your mind, doing that inventory, staying in the deep end, and draining the shallows. And we talked in detail about the 7 ways to not self-sabotage. I want to return now to the question I asked at the very beginning. What would an absolutely perfect schedule look like for you? And I encourage you after this or now to pause this and write that down. And then what is keeping you from it? Is it negative emotion? Is it fear? Is it imposterism? Is it yourself? Is it your own expectation? Is it someone else's expectations? Is it pressure from other external things? What is it that's keeping you from it? I want to end with this quote from Marcus Aurelius. He said, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly. Take away all the ego, take away all the imposterism, take away the fear of failure. Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." Thank you so much for listening this far. I really appreciate it. I hope that this has been interesting and has made you curious about some of the literature. There are lots of references in here. I encourage you to go out and seek them out or seek out others. There's my email. There's my Twitter handle. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much. And I look forward to hearing from you or seeing you at conferences in the future.